How's everybody doing? Can we all stand and stretch a little bit, please? I think we've been sitting all day.
Absolutely.
Let's all stretch a little. Yeah, just stretch. And while you're standing, pull out your phones and get your LinkedIn app. If you don't have the app, just look over someone's shoulder. Do you guys have your phones with you? You're all good. Go get them. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
Going to get it.
All right. Everyone has their phones? Yes, everybody has their phones. Wave your phone. He's going to take some pictures. Wave your phone.
This is an
All right.
interesting exercise.
Okay. All right. Everyone wave their phones. All right. Now, if you just go into the LinkedIn app, please, everyone. Okay. And then click on the network, which is the two heads that you have on your phone, right? The two heads, the icon, the community where you get connections. Everybody there? And then you should see a little plus with a face. Do you all see that? Click on that and hit Find Nearby. And you'll have to make sure your Bluetooth is on, and a piece of magic is about to happen. Look as everybody in the room shows up on the screen. Look, right now. Look up here, and you can see what's happening. Does everyone see that? Now start connecting with everybody right now. You don't have to if you don't want to, but feel free to connect with me and to connect with our great panelists. So I'll do it once again, okay? I'll just do it once again. Everyone just go to the LinkedIn app. Click on where it's the two heads are there, right? Where it's the network. Click on that. And next to it is a single head with a plus. Press that, please. And click on Find Nearby. And I know there are a lot of questions, including, is this a way to pick up people at bars? And the answer is no. All right? You see how hard it is to get people even onto this thing. So please connect with me and connect with our panelists. And I do want to address the issue of privacy before we move on. That this is, I believe, safe to share with you because you will only connect when you want to be connected to. Does that make sense? You saw you have to do 6 different steps, download the app, all of that. You will not find anyone in an airplane if you open this, or at a bar or a sports game. You won't have that happen, right? So I hope you'll test that out, play with it, and we're going to get started. Thanks, everybody.
If you all could throw me a follow on Instagram, it would impress my wife too. So if you guys just want to.
No such thing as a shameless plug. Yeah, all right. Okay, so I'm going to leave my screen open so that you folks can jump in and connect. As soon as you leave the screen, you disappear. People cannot connect with you. So that's how that works, and that's why I feel comfortable sharing it with everybody. So we're here now to talk as the second last panel about what brands are doing on social and how we can learn from brands. How many of you work for a nonprofit of some kind? Raise your hand. Okay, and how many of you work for for-profit brands or companies? Okay, and the rest are students and teachers and other kinds of folks. Great. So I'm going to just go in this order and just ask each of our panelists to share their thoughts on this topic, and we're going to give you plenty of time for questions, so please make sure you have questions. The other thing I should say is I'm a little disappointed. We're only trending at number 4 on Twitter tonight, so let's make sure we go up from where we are. We're at number 4. Our goal is to beat National Boss Day and other things, so let's go up higher than that. We were at number 3, so we're going to rely on all of you to share and tweet as we're going here, and let's go up to number 1. All right, let's start. We have 2 Michaels here, so we're going to start with this first Michael here. Michael Goon, Anheuser-Busch.
Yes.
Talk to us.
Hi, awesome. So real quick, it's an honor to be here. There's a lot of great work everyone's doing. The panel right before us. Obviously we're here to talk about how purpose is at the center of brands. I think those women earlier hit on some great points. So for me personally, just to tell you what I do, I am a director on the Better World team. And when we think about Better World at Anheuser-Busch, it's our CSR platform, right? Which touches on a number of key pillars. Number 1, responsible drinking, our long-term commitment towards that. In addition, environmental sustainability. Beer is a natural product, believe it or not. Hops, barley, etc. And then, in addition to that, economic impact. So when you think about the company with the breadth that Anheuser-Busch has, 18,000 colleagues across the country, and that's just the colleagues, right? That does include the people who are driving our beer to the wholesaler bringing it to the retailer, et cetera. So really, anything that touches on those platforms, that's what I support from the parent Anheuser-Busch company. And in addition to that, which I really love about my role, is I get to work with our brands, right? So if you haven't heard of Anheuser-Busch, which is a little bit shocking, I'm sure you've heard of Stella, Budweiser, Busch, et cetera. So my job is to work with those brands in an effort to help them develop their Better World platforms.
Go through some of those brands again. And people, make some noise if you know these brands.
Budweiser. Yeah. Stella.
People need some now.
Awesome. Busch. That was a little lower. We're in New York City. Totally get it. But
Representative.
if there's a census, no. But yeah. So again, it's just working across those brands, really helping them develop Better World platforms and making a difference.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
So let's move to Christina and tell us your thoughts on this in a slightly different industry.
Sure.
Yeah.
So I'm Krista, and I lead the health and wellness team at DeVries. I have been working over the past 13 years with clients across the food, health, and wellness industry. So everything from pharmaceutical companies like Pfizer and Takeda to over-the-counter brands like Emergency, Advil, Centrum, and Splenda as a food example.
We have to do the same thing now.
same
Yeah.
thing.
So, all right,
Yeah.
Go again. Go again.
Pfizer.
Yeah, all right.
Some says the health and wellness guy here. Takeda,
All right.
All right.
Splenda,
Splenda.
Yes.
Yeah.
Advil.
Yes.
Who needs one now? Anybody? All right.
So if you take a look at how people have been talking about purpose recently and how they've been showing up, it's deeply personal. It's much more personal than it has been before, and they're making decisions about brands based on that. And so when I think about social good, I like to start with myself as a consumer. And one brand that I think has done a great job and that I admire is Bando. Is anyone familiar with that brand? All right, we've got one person here. Check out Bando. They're not a client. I wish they were. So if you know them, if you have a connection, they are a brand.
Always be selling. You know that,
Yeah,
right?
always be selling.
Right.
They're a brand that creates really fun products, everything from notebooks to tote bags to mugs and many, many other things. And the reason why I started gravitating toward them is they have very inspirational sayings on these. So there's a tote bag that says, "You are worth it," or "I did my best." And so I first started buying these products because I'm just one of those eternal optimists. And if you follow me on Instagram, you'll see I'm always sharing positive things. But I actually started buying them because I was going through a tough challenge in terms of mental health. And so it's something I had dealt with for a while. And I saw these as just little love notes to myself, little inspiration to keep going and to get through tough times. And also saw it as a way of connecting with other people and starting to kind of share that positive message and maybe give them hope if they saw me walking around the subway with a tote bag over my shoulder. So last year, Jen Gotch, who is the founder of the brand, partnered with Iconery and Bring Change to Mind, which is an organization that helps on the mental health side. And so what I loved about this collaboration is they came out with a line of jewelry, necklaces, I'm wearing one of them now, that said depression and anxiety. And for every purchase, all proceeds went to Bring Change to Mind. Paired with that, Jen Gotch shared her personal experience with mental health. She shared it on her social channels. She shared her experiences crying at work and getting through it, the ups and downs of living with mental health illness. And so it's something that she got the conversation going. Obviously, it's very sensitive, so it took some time to get some traction, but it's something that really was meaningful to me, and it has been a great conversation starter and helped me feel more connected to the brand. So when I think about working with clients on identifying what their purpose is and how to figure it out, I think it's so important for brands to think about, well, what's authentic to what's going on, going beyond the surface level values that you have, what's really meaningful, and then taking a look at culturally what's important to your consumer. So at DeVries, we talk with our clients about decoding culture, and that's not about just pop culture or chasing after what the latest trend is, but instead it's really thinking about what are people's values values? What is their collective expression of their beliefs and behaviors? And how do we connect with that in an authentic way? So it's taking a step back and really being thoughtful about it. And if you do it in the right way, and it can really lead to some powerful impact.
It was a great example from this summer. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, so this past summer, my team at DeVries worked with Secret Deodorant. Anyone familiar with that brand here?
Yeah.
Raise your hand if you think your neighbor needs it right now. No, don't raise your hand. Don't raise your hand.
Tree wanted to give it out after today. So many of you may have seen in July, the brand was working with the U.S. women's national team on the soccer front. And the conversation around equal pay was hot and heavy. And it was a moment where Secret decided to engage, but what was critical about their engagement is that this is something that has been a work in progress over time. So they decided as a brand, as a company over time, that they were going to stand for equal pay and equal representation. And so it was something that was very strategic over time, and over the summer there was an opportunity to take a bigger stand and do more than just talking about it. So they decided to make a donation, just over $500,000, and it was significant in that it was $23,000 for each of the 23 players, and really them kind of putting their money where their mouth is and showing their commitment.
Great. They were great. What a great example. All right, Michael.
You're really cool. Just that's awesome. So my name is Michael DeSalvo from Ogilvy. I work very much in the same health and wellness space as Krista does. So at Ogilvy, we work in PR and brand consulting. And what we do is we try and bring brands beyond what I like to call hotel bathroom advocacy. When you all stayed in hotels, I was in one last week for work. You go into a hotel bathroom, and what do they tell you to do with the towels in every hotel bathroom? Reuse them, right? And they give you a card that says, reuse these towels. Why should you reuse these towels? To save the environment, right? Because it's what they're doing. But it's very obtuse in knowing they're saving money by not washing the towels. So isn't it ironic that every hotel on the planet has decided that not washing the towels is their corporate social platform? So what we do is we
Gotta step in and stand up for my hotel clients.
Sorry. It's a nice gesture, but we could do better as brands, right? We can take authentic steps. I'm going to stop using the word authentic because it stopped being authentic at some point, and connecting people to purposes that actually mean something. For health and wellness clients, we actually have a little bit of a different issue, right? The panel before us was talking about how consumers can make a choice. If you are diagnosed with a disease or if you have a health condition, your choice is not one of purpose. Your choice is one of health. And with that, knowing that patients may not have the choice between providers, how do we encourage our clients to still be responsible? And that's based on an assumption that every single individual in the companies that we work for is a good person that is trying to do good. And how do we create the culture so that they can collectively make good decisions around the world, and they can contribute to causes that mean something and make change? Because we're privileged enough to be working with brands that have the gravitas and have the ability to make that change and taking the steps to do that, all while considering the ultimate question that every client asks: can we do good while also doing well? And that's something that you constantly have to balance. So by embedding that cause and by embedding that purpose in the day-to-day, we could create solutions for them that deliver on their promises to other people and also deliver on their promises to themselves to make a better world.
Nice. Give us a couple of examples, concrete things that you're
Give
doing.
a shout. Anyone? Pfizer. We already did that one, right? Pfizer. Anyone know Chantix? You guys know the turkey commercials? Ray
Oh,
Liotta,
yeah. Those are great.
right? Those-
Great.
Right? Love the turkey. Then I worked at Johnson & Johnson, Bristol Myers Squibb, Boehringer Ingelheim, for anyone in Connecticut.
What do they do?
They save people's lives.
Excellent.
They're-
Give us like what are the brand names of the things they do?
Chantix, Yervoy, Opdivo, Erlita. Anyone? So a lot of those are oncology products. I'm going to call it the female Viagra, something that I worked on, as far if anyone's familiar with it, female sexual dysfunction. One thing that's really interesting about all these clients, and all of these different diseases and causes, you get to learn a lot about the communities and the communities that pop up around these health conditions. And it is critical for any health condition to be a part of that community. You can't just create a product without becoming a member, because by delivering on your promise or delivering on your solution, you are potentially one of the more important members of that community. And a lot of what we do is creating those inroads so that it's not just a demographic on a slide, but it's a person with a name and a face, and that our clients can participate in that, and then us as well.
Since we're talking about brands, what is the brand of that, the female sexual dysfunction product? Because I'm not familiar with it, and that says something about the marketing and
Yeah,
of
so
it,
the name of the brand is Addi, ADDI. And one thing that was really interesting, I had worked on it before it had gotten approved, and the discussion was there are 7 treatments approved for erectile dysfunction, and there are 0 approved for female sexual dysfunction. Female sexual dysfunction has been established in the DSM-3, now 5.
That's the book that the textbook
Correct.
reference
the textbook
guide.
that
The reference,
diagnoses diseases such as this. And the moment where I decided that I wanted to be in health the rest of my career was I was speaking with a woman who was living with hypoactive sexual desire disorder, which is she has an inability to feel sexual desire regardless of her situation. And she said, I have spoken to psychologists, psychiatrists, general practitioners. I've been told to divorce my husband. I've been told to drink more wine. I have been told to take self-help classes and take pole dancing classes. And you are the first person I've ever spoken to that has acknowledged that my experience is real and has acknowledged that there is something that other people aren't getting. And that was the moment where I realized that by understanding people's conditions and understanding their whole person, that you can actually integrate and make a change in their life at a personal level. And in the health space, it's not just about sales and revenue, but it's also about that day-to-day impact that could be felt. And that's something that was really, really cool for me.
Yeah. Thank you. Krista, I loved the phrase decoding culture, and you were saying it's not about just jumping on what's trending today. So how do you teach your clients the value of that? How do you teach your own team and your bosses? Because you got to manage everybody into this, right?
Yeah, so it's a great segue building off of what Michael was talking about and really getting to know people and what they value and what's important to them. So part of what we do is sit down and we really get to know first their target from the client and some intel, but then we really start to dig deeper into what are some of those causes that are meaningful to them and look at some of the more macro trends. And so one relevant macro trend is the nothing off limits right now. So a lot of people who are craving that connection with brands are the ones who are looking to really be able to have a channel to voice and connect with other people about things that are important and usually are difficult to talk about. So whether it's on the sexual wellness front, which we've been digging into that a lot too, sexual wellness, mental wellness, it's something that that is really valuable in connecting with people. So I think it starts with digging deeper into what are some of those bigger picture things that we can take a look at.
Do you often feel like it's not easy to make that point with them? Sometimes they push back and...
I think more and more brands are surprisingly open to that. I think they've been following what some of their idol brands are and seeing how they're connecting with people and they're open to it.
Right. And each of you has... in your industry, certain regulations and other ways in which you have to be careful about what you say. So, we've had other brands up here who can say almost anything they want. They have that kind of freedom, or they're startups. So I'll go to Michael first to just talk about what are the restrictions being in the, particularly the adult beverage industry that you have to deal with, and what makes it harder in the social goods space to interact there?
I mean, that's a loaded question. Really though, in the best possible way, right? So to get really granular, and then I'll answer your question is, beer is a product meant for those who are 21 and older, right? And it's funny for me being up here saying like, oh, drink responsibly. We're not saying don't drink beer. We're saying do it in a way that you're protecting yourself, you're planning ahead, moderate your consumption, etc. And just to throw a number at you, which many people don't know, but in the history of Anheuser-Busch, we have donated with our partners $1 billion in responsible drinking initiatives. So that's a pretty incredible number. So with that being said, though, to answer your question, when you think about the physical person, right? There's 50 sets of laws that we have to follow by because all the states are different. But to that point, though, in the beer industry, we do our best, and to bring up a very similar industry, right? Joe Camel. Beer cannot have a Joe Camel. It's super important to us. I'm speaking on behalf of Anheuser-Busch right now, but I can say that in general, our goal is to market to those that are of legal drinking age, to ensure that they're drinking responsibly, having a good time, getting home safely, and when we think about what we do on social, when you look at our respective brands, again, Budweiser, Natty, I would also suggest looking at some of the craft breweries that we own as well. Blue Point's one of them, Goose Island, I'm sure many of you have heard. All of our marketing efforts really target that 21 and older audience, but the one thing that we do is we don't promote excessive drinking, which I think is super important because, you see lots of negative news out there. We're getting into the time of year where there will be some people enjoying themselves, but they need to ensure they're doing so wisely and doing so in a way that protects the people around them and also themselves as well. Beer brings people together. We're talking about social connections. It does, and we just want to make sure everyone's doing it in the right way.
All right.
Yeah, and one of the things that Michael and I were talking about before, especially working in industries that a lot of people, the natural question is to ask, but are you genuinely doing this? And what does your process look internally? I think one of the most important things when thinking about connecting to social good is, can we pass the test of asking ourselves the tough questions? So if we're advocating for equal pay and equal representation, are we offering that to our employees? And if we're not, are we willing to make changes and share our progress? I think, again, as you've all seen and know, you don't have to get it perfect. It's going to take some practice, but what's important is that you're asking yourself the tough questions because they're bound to come up no matter what you do. There is backlash against Bando, the brand that I mentioned. There will always be somebody out there criticizing what you're doing. It's the planning and making sure you're aware of what could happen and just knowing how many different perspectives there are in this world and that someone at one level in your company could have one belief and someone in another area could have another, and thinking about how all of the different interactions people have with your brand can shape perceptions and making sure that you're bringing your employees along the way with you and understanding what we stand for and how we communicate about that is really key.
And Michael, you used a very interesting phrase when we were prepping. You said the red face test. Talk about that and what that means within the world of marketing and comms in your business.
I'm so in my bubble. I didn't even know that this was a new term. But so the red face
It's
test.
a pharma
it's
term.
is it?
Yeah.
Wait, how many
So-
people know red face test?
Show of hands if you know the term red face test.
Oh, yeah. So.
Oh, you're about to learn.
You're about to learn.
Lean in.
Okay,
You're about
you're about to gain some knowledge.
It's when Shri teases me about my snakeskin jacket.
I have the same.
Didn't pass
I
that
have the
test.
same jacket. I'm just, so the red face test is, can we say something without feeling embarrassed about it? And it's a genuine honesty idea. For example, can I say I own the same jacket without being embarrassed about it? Yes. But in regards to the health world, it's, can we do something and then look someone in the eye and say we're being responsible and we're being compliant and being accurate? If the answer is no, then we shouldn't do it. And one thing that I think is so valuable about regulated industries in regards to honesty and accuracy of information. At this point in our lives, right now, there is a lot of mistrust of companies, a lot of mistrust of corporations and what they're putting out there. Every day you are seeing people get caught in lies. In regulated industries, like in health or in the beverage industry, because there are such processes in place, you can count on the information that's coming from some of these companies, frankly, because there are government organizations that are reviewing them to ensure that they're accurate and honest. And in the flipped world that we are living in right now, for consumers to have reliability on health-based information, to know that that is accurate, or on information about things that they're putting into their body, there needs to be a level of implicit trust of what you're putting out there. So when we can say we're confident that this is backed by this clinical study, or this is backed by this piece of peer-reviewed research, or backed by this advocacy organization, we could feel good about what we're putting out in the world, and people can make important decisions based on that. And that's one of the most important roles that I think brands and companies have to play now.
Yeah.
And I think they take that responsibility very seriously in our space.
If I could just piggyback for 1 second off that, because being in-house, right? I know that's the dream job for many agency people in certain ways, in other ways not. So it's so interesting to have your perspective. But, when I was for a very long time, and it was amazing. But what I will say is this, when you sit in the four walls of our headquarters, whether it's the New York one where I reside or the one in St. Louis, you hear a lot of people say, are people going to care, right? How will this affect people? And I think the interesting thing that we do, when we develop our brands, when we develop campaigns, et cetera, is we put people first, and you can never go wrong. And that includes those who are beer drinkers who are actually consuming our products, but also the people internally. We're all beer drinkers too, and that's what really matters is when you put people first.
Okay, folks, we are now at number 3. We want to go higher than that, so trending. So let's do this. Jamie's encouraging me here. We're also ready for questions. Who's got some questions? Please raise your hand. Yeah, go ahead and tell us who you are, please. Hold on.
Tracy Meyer from Princeton University, and this actually is not necessarily just about my employer, but a more general question, especially when you talk about medical conditions and health issues. We haven't talked about building strategic relationships to help drive out messages. And I think some of our partners can really help with that, and I wanted to pick your brains on how you view that.
Thank you. One of you, go ahead.
So I'll start by saying that for a lot of our clients and for Ogilvy as a company, we depend on important partnerships. Speaking about Princeton, for example, or clinical research academies like Princeton, they are some of the strongest proponents for ensuring that science is sound and that science translates into health outcomes, for example. On the marketing side, Ogilvy Works, we've just established a partnerships division that ensures that we have that layer of not only credibility, but also that layer of checks and balances. So we work a lot with advocacy partners and in connecting our clients to advocacy partners. So for those of you who may not know, advocacy partners cannot endorse a specific product. So if you work with the American Heart Association, the American Lung Association, they need to only be able to remain what we call unbranded. So they can never speak about a brand or product. They can only speak about a disease state, education, and a category. And having those relationships are so critical to achieving not only our clients' success, but also achieving improvement in the world by ensuring that our patients are understanding what they're living with, or understanding all the options available to them, and then being able to deliver on that while, to be a little bit of a cynic, providing financial resources and funds to these nonprofit organizations that they need to do equally as important or more important work elsewhere.
Yeah, and just to piggyback off you, Michael. So, for your question, very different, right? Because beverage and that sort of thing. But for us, it's what makes sense. And I don't mean that from a business standpoint. I mean that from a humanitarian standpoint. And, our emergency drinking water program, right? So just to throw some numbers, we were talking numbers earlier. The American Red Cross is one of our oldest partners. We've been partnering with them since the 1906 San Francisco earthquake, which I may have got the earthquake incorrect, but the city's definitely right. But I tell you this because, over that time, we've seen this emergency drinking water program answer a number of disaster relief. So Hurricane Harvey in Houston, as an example, right? We work with them to ensure, because of our network, and again, I mentioned the trucks, the breweries, et cetera, we have those capabilities to help people, but it's our partnership with them that really gives us credibility and helps drive relevance and really, further solidifies what we're doing for, the community.
Okay,
Yeah, and I just was going one more. I know the rule of not the third build, but I would say the advocacy groups and nonprofit groups are really important to us in many ways. One of them is they're actually our clients in many cases. So Andrea from Center on Addiction was here earlier speaking. We work closely with those and kind of serve as matchmaker across both. Sorry about that. So I think, in terms of the brands that we work with, when we talk about decoding culture and helping understand, we rely on our nonprofit partners very much so in that area. They're the ones who are living and breathing the everyday of consumers and patients, whether it's in the health space and they're patients who are living with a certain disease or condition. That's where we go to as our trusted counselors on what we should be thinking about and what's important to consumers.
Okay, folks, we have about 15 minutes left, and we'll have short questions and short answers so we can get a lot of them in. Please, tell us who you are.
Hi, I'm Danielle Semper. I work at a PR agency. I'm a big Bud Light fan.
Thanks.
Yeah, I have a question about maybe some tips or quick advice that you'd have for a young PR professional who's doing work for a client that they might not totally be 100% sold into, and their team or their company seems on board and this person doesn't. Do you have any tips for someone kind of at an early stage in their career, unsure how to navigate that?
I am so glad you asked that question. From my perspective, right, and again, I've only been in-house for about a year, and really early on, whether it's something internally with your team or externally, you gotta be solution focused. And you have the people who focus on the problem. It's like, okay, let's get past the problem. And I think people at a young age who learn to be solution focused accelerate their careers so much faster than their peers, and it really stands out among them.
Okay, good answer. And if you want to jump in, go ahead. Otherwise, do we have the next question? Yeah.
Hi, I'm Wendy Boson with Quest Diagnostics, so a healthcare company. And I just have a question
we've all been
well, I have a question
x-rayed by your folks.
Well, I have a question about healthcare and pharma in particular because, this whole conference has been about social justice, social good, and of course with healthcare right now, the elephant in the room is pricing, and it's part of the debates going on both the Republican and Democrat side, and I'm just wondering, I go to these conferences and I hear people like you folks from pharma talking about, all the corporate social responsibility programs they're doing. My company's in the same boat, but at the same time, you still have that list charge master. You still have the tension with the health plans. Where do you guys see this going like 5-10 years from now? And how does pharma, kind of raise its profile and reputation given this dynamic?
And we'd also add things like the Purdue story, the Sacklers, all of that has given pharma, and Martin Shkreli, the pharma bro, that's a thing, right? So, Michael, you want to start us off on that?
Yeah, of course. So I think that it's a great question. It's the question that the country is rattling with. I'm not going to speak on behalf of those that set pricing for our clients, but I will speak on my opinion on that, which is that in regards to the fact that for the past 40 years, healthcare has been an increasingly tightening knot. And it is at a point where nobody knows what is the part of the knot that we need to pull on in order to unravel it. But what has changed over the past few years that is exciting is that there has been a recognition by companies that something does need to change. And by the panel that you're speaking about of all the CEOs of pharma companies was the first step in something that I think is a really great process in at least saying we have an eye on this and we need to come up with a solution. As to where it goes, I do think there's going to be a radical shift in our healthcare system over the next 20, 30 years. And we've seen more movement in our healthcare system in the past decade than we had seen since FDR was president. So in regards to that, we're on the cusp of some sort of movement. What that may be, I would be predicting the future in a way that would be irresponsible. But what I do know is that the people that need to be involved right now, at least the clients that I work with, there are no higher people that have their eye on it in making sure that they're changing it. And we're already beginning to see consideration, at least at a communications level, of how do these choices affect the way that we're perceived? How does our perception affect the way that we succeed? And they are now more connected than they've ever been.
Okay. Krista, do you have a thought on this?
Yeah, I would just build and say it goes back to, again, asking, I think, knowing that people today are much more involved in their health decisions, especially when we look at it generationally now. People are also considering outside of just, in the pharmaceutical space, broader wellness and seeking other options. And so companies are realizing that they need to be able to kind of be more open about what they're doing. And so I think the more that they're aware that they're out there and in the open and people are watching, it's just thinking more carefully about what decisions are and what's important to people and how, processes that may have been in place for a while will need to change over time.
We're down to our last 5 minutes. I want to ask you folks, there are people from nonprofits here who love to work with brands because brands have budgets and brands have reach and brands have opportunity for nonprofits. So if each of you can give us what is the quick way in which you consider? Do you take outside requests? How does that work? What's the process? Is there a process? Go ahead.
Yeah, so process, there's no perfect process for anything like that, right? Because I think, any partner goes to someone with a good cause, and that's super, super important. But, I had said this when we were meeting earlier, and I think this is a good time to bring up an analogy. You can't fit a circle into a square hole or vice versa. So, when we look at partnerships, and just to name a few people we partner with, NGOs, Keep America Beautiful, I mentioned American Red Cross earlier, the River Network, etc. Those make sense for us because of what we do as a business. And it's not that we don't support other causes, because we 100% do. But when we think about our consumer and what fits what we're doing as an industry, that's really the question we ask ourselves again is, putting people first, how can we make a difference? And does this make a fit for us?
Great. And your brands?
Yeah, so we all the time are meeting with people, like we said, always be networking. Before, last Friday, I had a woman come in from a cancer-focused organization and just had her share with me, she was looking to find good brand partners, and so they shared a little bit more about their values and their evolution and what's important to them in a partner. And then I took a step back and looked at, okay, of the clients we have, what's important to them and what might be a good fit. And so it's always helpful to have that first conversation and find out what's important to you. So then as I'm in meetings and brainstorms, I'm thinking about you and making a recommendation. So definitely open to connecting.
Great. You all heard that. Okay.
Yeah, so absolutely very much the same. But what I would say about advocacy partners, brands are constantly looking for advocacy partners because it is the equivalent of having like the high school quarterback point at you at a party and say that person's cool. Like it raises your credibility, it raises your cachet. Clearly, I wasn't on the football team, so that awe was so hurtful. It just no, but I do think that one thing that advocacy organizations are doing and should know is that the role that you play in the conversation is so critical, both in ensuring that information is accurate and honest, but also is driving conversations with a level of authority and experience that other people cannot drive. If you look at the fact that the tobacco industry and the tobacco epidemic that has been going on for 60 years in this country since we knew that smoking was bad, was entirely driven by advocacy organizations standing up and saying that there needs to be a change, fighting against literally billions of dollars of lobbying money in this country, shows the power of true voices. Advocacy and nonprofit organizations are when good people decide that they're going to take it from a disorganized protest in the streets into a codified organization that can make actual change. So with that, I just encourage you to not forget that mission, especially when you're faced with the challenges that a nonprofit is, which is how do we keep the funding coming through the door that could keep us running? And a lot of times it's brand partnerships that can do that. If you get someone on your side, you can make an even bigger impact.
All right, folks, so I'm going to ask each of them for a final thought and give you a chance to connect with each of them. So I'm going to start here with Michael Goon. He's on Twitter. I am Mike Goon is his handle. You see that on the screen. His Instagram is also at I am Mike Goon, and you can find him on LinkedIn. So go ahead, Mike.
Thank you. So I guess what I'll do is, because earlier there were students in the room in a good way, right? And I think, when you sit up here and you look at the four of us, it's, wow, like, how can I get up there someday? Or, you see, for us panelists-wise, like, oh, they're pretty successful. I like to think so, right? And what I would say is two things to you. I know I mentioned before being solution-focused, but, don't be afraid to say yes to everything, right? And perfect example, last night, so last night I had helped an executive at our company prepare for another panel, and I get a phone call at 5:20, and she said, hey, and I thought she was going to need updated messaging or slides, etc. And she's like, no, I want you to participate in the panel. And I said, okay, let's do it. So I drove up to where I had to go and did it. So I think those two things, saying yes to everything, you never know what you're going to get from it, and just being a doer.
That's great. All right, folks, give him a hand. Mike Goon, everybody. Krista.
Sure. So
And her handles are Lombardi Krista and DeVries Global. And her Instagram is StrongXA and DeVries Global. She says use both. And of course, she's on LinkedIn. Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I would say, I think this was mentioned before, but I really think opening up your mind and seeking other perspectives and asking a lot of questions from other people who are different than you are is really important. I think, I talk a lot about mental health being a focus for me, but there was a really great article in Well and Good the other day talking about just the importance of asking questions and finding out other people's experiences, because culturally, a white woman versus a black woman versus a man versus, there's so many different perspectives, and not all of us think the same way. Not all of us feel like it's right to communicate in a certain way about it. So really making sure that you do your due diligence and you're asking other people and getting perspective before you go out and say something is just critical.
All right, folks, that's Crystal Lombardi. Give her a hand. Michael, and Michael DeSalvo is M DeSalvo on Twitter and at Ogilvy, and Instagram is M DeSalvo16 on Instagram, and he's on LinkedIn as well.
If you know the person that has M DeSalvo on Instagram, if you could tell them I'd like to get rid of the 16. Great.
How much will you pay? Let's
Yeah.
get
There was,
numbers.
maybe like $200, or actually the Michael
that's
DeSalvo
pretty
that owns
good.
a State Farm agent in Jersey. If he could get off Google, that would be great.
I'll look into that in Jersey.
And while we have Quest Diagnostics in the room, it's awesome that you could get your blood work in the Apple Health app. That's the coolest thing that I've seen. So I know that I've gotten up here and it's speaking on behalf of health and wellness and saying all the good things, right? The one thing that I would say that as an agency, because a lot of us will work at agencies or will work for brands, is that your counsel has weight. And you can encourage and drive brands to do great things. And a lot of times that's with your actions. We have walked away from clients and we have told them that we aren't able to support a particular initiative, for example. Similarly, PR and public perception is one of those factors that doesn't have a dollar sign in it that can convince people not to do something. If someone would have told Pepsi that Kendall Jenner at a protest wasn't a good idea, they probably would have not put that commercial out there. So we have power, and Ogilvy always says that we may not, even if we don't work for perfect clients, we work for clients to find their best self, and we drive them to do that. There is change that can happen from the inside of organizations, and we are the power that's able to do that, and the power of public perception, and as arguably the X hundred amount of people in this tri-state area that understand public perception, it's our ability to change that. It's our superpower to drive social good, and we have a hell of a good argument. Did I sound rebellious when I said hell of a good argument?
Real tough.
right.
Real tough.
Right? I sound
Michael DeSalvo, everybody, give him a hand. Okay, so we're going to once again just open, this is the last 60 seconds, so we're going to open up our LinkedIn and make sure you get a chance to connect with each other. Remember, go to the LinkedIn, go to the network, go to the icon, and hit Find Nearby. And I'm just going to leave it open for a second so that you can all find each other. I saw at least 50 people in there, which is fantastic. So,
That's intimidating.
yeah. And just connect with each other. This is a good way. You should all have a LinkedIn rule. Mine is I connect with people I'd like to know, people I should know, and people I already know. Have a strategy. All of you sitting here listening to us for an hour, that gives you the right for us to connect with you. So, all right. And before we go, my principle is selfie or it didn't happen. So I'm going to ask my panelists here to stand up. We're going to do 2 selfies, one with this side of the room and then one with this side of the room. And then we're out of here and let the other better panel come, the next better panel. All right, here we go.